Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Emerge, the health podcast for busy, high performing women. We're coming off a holiday weekend. I hope everyone had a great time. I'm a bit congested, if you can't tell, on here, but we're going to do this anyways. What I wanted to talk about today is something that I think we all could stand to think about and probably don't think about in entirely complete context. And I'll explain what I mean in just a minute here. But what I'm focusing in on is how we define health and how we really look at how healthy we are, and also how we measure progress and results when we are trying to make changes. And this idea came to me, well, I often have ideas while I'm in the shower, or in this case, I was getting my car washed. And those of you who don't live anywhere near where I am, because we have listeners all over the world, I live in Alaska on a dirt road. I drive a white car, and we go through a pretty muddy, rainy season. And I will be honest, I hadn't had my car washed since the summer, and we're now like well into winter up here. So it was really dirty, right? Like outside just looked brown, even though it's a white car. So we go through the car wash and come out, and there's this wall of mirrors that you kind of drive by, and you get to look out and see how clean and pretty your car looks. And so I'm looking out the window and I'm like, ooh, it's like I have a brand new car. Like, look at this. It's so exciting. And then I turn to get my wallet to tip the people, because they kind of like dry parts your car and whatnot, and look around, and I'm like, oh, just kidding. Because the inside is still full on, 8-year-old who eats in the car and 1-year-old puppy. Like slobber on the windows, just trash everywhere. I'm not the most picky person about the inside of my car, clearly. And it got me thinking about how we define our health, and what qualifies us as healthy, and how we can tell if another person is healthy or not. And it's it tends to be, if we look good and feel good, then we must be good, we must be healthy. And I have another story to share that really dives into why that's not actually accurate or the case. And one of the keys with that is there's pieces missing. And actually, the best definition of health that I've ever found is from the World Health Organization. I've talked about this on the show before, but how they define health is the complete, I wrote it down so that I don't forget it, but the state of complete mental, physical, and social or emotional well-being, and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. And so we tend to think of ourselves as being healthy or not based on, whether or not we get sick all the time, or how we look on the outside, or, it's all based on how we look and think we should feel, but we don't really pay attention to what's truly on the inside. I can have the cleanest outside of my car that there is, but the inside is still destroyed. And, we can make things look pretty on the outside, but inside they're not functioning the way they're supposed to. So the story that best exemplifies this is actually another chiropractor I knew. He was, still is, kind of a leader in the chiropractic profession. And he would talk about his own story of how he actually got into doing chiropractic, which a lot of us, have these stories that we tend to share. But they also can tend to, be in the realm of functional medicine as well. We'll just put it that way. And so this guy, he was a bodybuilder and did, competitions, super fit, super lean. You can Google pictures if you want to of him, ladies. His name is Chris Zano. He doesn't compete anymore, but, just like a really buff, fit guy, like looked amazing. And he shares this story of, his stomach was always upset, and he thought he was healthy because he looked good, he felt good, he exercised, he was this buff dude winning body competitions, but something was just off, and he started having a lot of trouble with his bowel movements. And so he shared this story of he actually pooped his pants in the middle of a big box store where he didn't make it to the bathroom in time because he couldn't, get to the back. And it was like this bloody mess. He had to have his wife come pick him up with towels in the car because he was just covered in poo. And he actually had developed ulcerative colitis. And you would never guess it by looking at him from the outside. He looked totally healthy, how we would define health. But inside, things were falling apart. His gut was inflamed. He was developing these ulcers. He wasn't digesting his food well. He was starting to have a lot of problems. And a lot of that came from, it didn't just happen overnight one day. He ate pretty well and ate clean, but a lot of the stuff that he pushed his body to do, to compete and to do that kind of stuff, put stress on his body that ultimately ended up causing disease. And so part of how his journey, to health, back to true health, and chiropractic was involved in that because that's one of the avenues we use to just make sure the body's functioning the way it's supposed to. But my point in sharing all this and, these stories is I think, and I find this with my clients and with so many other women, myself included, we put so much emphasis on our external appearance, especially with losing weight. And this is kind of primarily what I'm focused on here. We are constantly looking at, how much weight have I lost, or what do my clothes look like? And we tend not to focus in on what honestly is more important, and that's what's going on the inside. Has your inflammation come down? Are you sleeping better? Like, there's keys and things that we have that can point to that we're actually improving in our health. We're not getting sick as often or for as long. There's all these other kind of avenues that we really should be focused and honed in on. And like, what's on the external, our appearance, is what comes secondary to that. And I think our culture in the West, Western culture in particular, has this completely backwards because we are so focused on, how we look and the clothes we wear, and like our everything is this thing outside of ourselves. And that's what defines, how healthy we are, how pretty we are, or, how much worth we have in the world. Like, there's all these things that we attach to what people see on the outside. And it's really about, especially in the world of health, what's going on the inside. Like, what's your mental state like? How's your social life? We've come out of, lockdown, and where most of us really struggled in that area, but have you re-engaged? Have you re-engaged in a healthy way? Or have you totally done yourself in? That was the topic of last week's podcast with Amy Rezek, who, she and I really dove into becoming social again, and how we can really overdo that too, as we are woo, we can see people again, and and push it too far. But my point is, with all of this, we tend to focus on the wrong things and in the wrong order. Not like it's not important, but we don't give enough we don't give enough emphasis or time on what's going on with us internally. And that can be, our digestion and how many bowel movements we're having a day. I talk about this all the time on the show. If it's not 2 and they're not normal, then, there's some work to do with your liver, with other things. We can be putting on a brave front, but really be struggling mentally and internally. We can, be stretched too thin socially, or we can not have enough engagement in that area. There's a lot of different things that are going on that, if we are willing to just take the time to actually focus on those and start to make some changes there. I talk about this all the time. We have to deal with our mindset. We have to deal with what's going on with our internal state. We have to deal with more of this foundational stuff in order to actually see any progress in the long term. I've shared the story on social media and a couple other places of a client I've been working with for, over a year at this point. And she was pretty, what we would call healthy coming in. She ate well and did all this stuff, but she had all this unresolved stuff from her past. And as we got her digestive tract cleaned out and healed and working better, she suddenly took on all this emotional processing and really dealing with stuff she hadn't dealt with for 40 plus years. And once she'd done that, all of a sudden her body was finally willing to start losing weight. And so she dropped 19 pounds in 2.5 weeks or something ridiculous like that. And it's not really ridiculous when you look at it that way, because, she went through a process and did it in a way where her body was suddenly ready to just release things that she could see in a more contextualized level, because it's something tangible and physical and that we can actually touch and feel. And it can be hard to focus on the other things first, but when we don't, we end up frustrated and plateaued and, struggling. And this can be in any area of life. It doesn't have to be just with health. I see this coming up in my business a lot, or if I hit plateaus, or even with trying to make certain changes, whether it's business, health, any of those things, relationships. We have to be willing to really dig deep and do some inner work before we're going to see the results on the outside. So hopefully this makes sense to you and serves you. And I wanted to share, I don't often talk, I think, in depth about what it is that I really do with people who work with me one-on-one. But, to sum it up and put it in a nutshell, it's really, we spend a lot of time doing that inner work and kind of providing a framework and a space where you can really work through this stuff and heal. And I call it the Chrysalis program is kind of my big longer term, like major health transformation and life overhaul program, because we really like put you in a cocoon of safety where you can work through this stuff. And not a lot, every woman I work with, goes through some big level of healing and change, and being able to step into the next version of themselves where that external stuff then becomes possible. The weight loss, the feeling good about themselves, the noticeable changes that people comment on, all of that stuff. But we have to do that other work first. And why I bring this up and share this today, just like start thinking about that and really dive in, and especially as we go into New Year's and resolutions and all this. I have stories I'll share about that on other podcasts, but all this stuff that we tend to focus on with that, I challenge you to really look at what's going on inside. Don't focus so much on the physical, especially if you try that every year and inevitably fail. There's another avenue and another path to go with that. The last thing I wanted to share, along with this today, is some of us sometimes need help in order to do something differently, right? And to get off the insanity wheel and make changes that will actually make a difference in the long term. And it can be challenging and frustrating and confronting and all of those things to work through that on your own a lot of times. And I don't often talk about what it is that I do with women that I work with one-on-one or in my group programs, or I kind of have like a whole gamut of ways that I connect with and work with people outside of this podcast and outside of the free Facebook group that I run now. And what that's really geared at, one of the biggest compliments someone's ever given me, and it's come up a few times, but I believe that, I've talked a lot about our zone of genius and using Gay Hendricks' book to kind of really get clear on and define what that is for yourself. And I truly believe mine is, I have the ability to stand for other people's transformation, with women in particular, and just help hold that safe space where they can really heal and work through this stuff, and provide the framework to help them do so that they come out on the other side being transformed, not just from an external perspective, but more so internally. And with that, I want that to be available to anybody who is ready for that. And I decided, just as a gift to those, whether you've worked with me in the past or have yet to work with me, or we've just met, or any of those things, I am offering 30% off of any of the ways that I work with women, including my new mastery program, which is for those who have worked with me in the past and are now, moving on, but still want some support. So if that is of any interest to you, 30% off gets to be pretty significant with some of the stuff I do. So if that is of any interest to you, that's available when you get started before the end of the year. So if you know that you're in a place where you're ready to do something different, you're tired of the hamster wheel, you're tired of doing all the same things over and over, and, or some variation of the same thing over and over, and nothing is working, and you're feeling frustrated and stuck, then I invite you, just reach out to me. The first step has no strings attached to it at all. We just connect and chat. I love to, learn about you, find out what you're dealing with, share more of what it is that I really do. And if we're a fit for each other, we'll talk about what the next steps look like and go from there. But I just wanted to share that as an opportunity that each of you have as a listener. And I work with women all over the place. So, Canada, the US, I haven't branched into the UK yet, but I've got some contacts over there, and eventually that might become a thing. But so don't let, location or any of that stop you from just reaching out. I'm happy to connect and chat. And if we're fit, we will talk about that. And at the very least, I'll help you come up with a plan that will take you, into the next stage of whatever your health journey looks like, not doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. All right, with that, we will see you all next week.